Hi, this is my blog. Basically, how we're going to do this is I'm going to go through right now the first 4 weeks which we've completed, and I've just jotted down some notes. So it's just going to be one big 4 weeks worth of work video. So week 1, it was, as you know, the introduction to the LOs, so the concept of a lot of different criterias and us creating our own assessment around those criteria. Initially, I was very overwhelmed with the concept because it was alien to me. But as I sort of thought about it towards the end of the week, I was relieved, because automatically, when we were given the first project to tick off as many LOs as possible, when I say given, sort of suggested that we start with a big project to knock a lot out. And so when that happened, I automatically found where I was heading audio-wise, because I haven't until now really known what direction I'd head. Initially, I came into the course thinking that I'd do film sound, which was like my passion, part of the reason I love editing so much. But basically, when we were told to pick a project, I automatically went to music production. So I think that's exactly where my passion lies, at least at this point in time. So that was integral in like finding what sort of niche I want to delve into. So in week 1, I basically slammed out an original called FYF, just on my keyboard. And I essentially just used my phone microphone to record that and my voice. So I sent through that demo to Alice, I think it was Tuesday. And from that, we were like, okay, what can we do with this song? Our initial reference tracks were Bad Reputation by Joan Jett, and also Ali Barter's stuff, because it's very like sweet and rock and roll at the same time. So yeah, I mean, that's the direction I wish to be in the future, but the song wasn't really appropriate for that sort of style. So we really had to knuckle down and find out what would be more appropriate as a reference track for that specific song. So that leads me to the next point. We found Fool's Gold by Jack Ripper. We decided to grab the kick from that, or at least have a kick similar to it to drive through the song, to make it as captivating as Fool's Gold was, because it's quite repetitive, both Fool's Gold and FYF. So that was our train of thought. Also, with the demo, definitely made sure that the key was perfect for my voice and the mood of the song and timbre and stuff like that. Oh, and we also built like basic synth ideas, found references that we really liked for that. That's about it. Reference tracks, sort of an evolution of reference tracks. We went from, rock and roll, indie, sort of punk rock to quite alternative electronically produced music, which is good because we can actually tick off more LOs that way. And of course, introduction to the concept of LOs. Of course, first it was overwhelming, but now it feels more like a blessing. And yeah, basically just made sure that the demo and the song was in the right key, and establish what sort of synths we need to establish the same sort of mood that we're going for from the original song. I started week 2. We actually got a rough instrumental track completed so that the vocals could be recorded over it in week 3. That was more towards the end of the week. At the start of the week, of course, we had the presentation. It just sort of set into stone the thought that we were having in the direction that we wanted, if that makes sense. So basically, things like our reference tracks. We thought about it fleetingly, but putting in the presentation made it that much more set in stone and that much more important. Basically, this is the week that we actually wasted. I mean, when I say wasted, I mean sort of found the direction in which we wanted to head in terms of recording. We had I think it was a 6-hour session in Audient B, and I brought in my Juno DS88, which is a keyboard. I don't have it with me at the moment, that's just a little old Yamaha. Basically brought that in, and we were to actually record my vocals in that session, but I was sick, which is actually one of our established risks in our plan. So luckily, because it was only week 2, it wasn't that like detrimental to our planning. So basically, Alice and I actually, we recorded Perfect Piano Piece, and we went up to the roof for a break, and we eventually established that we should do all of the instrumental through MIDI. Now initially I was like, okay, MIDI, great, because Alice has all the experience in MIDIs and synths, and I mean, it's all very new to me. I was like a bit more frightened because I didn't actually know what that specifically entailed. So that recording session was basically moot, completely moot. Also because we were actually thinking about using just the really raw piano sound, which is why I got the Juno DS88, because it has that voice and capability to sound like a proper grand piano. But because my voice was playing up at the time, I thought that I could try to change the key while we were recording. That was one of the only tracks we had, and it ended up being that we couldn't actually use that because it was in a different key. And from that session, we actually thought we were going to change the key, but going back over the demo, Alice actually said, I'm not sure that changing the key would be the best idea because it just sits really well with your voice, especially with like the certain intervals that are happening and like the jumps. Okay, so the weekend of week 2, I met one of the animators at SAE, Nick Franich, and we basically were talking about Studio One, and we decided to do the interdisciplinary LO together. So him and his mate Jordan Thwaite, they're both a team for this project. So like Alice and I, they're working on things together. So I pitched to them that we would have a music clip for our music track, and perhaps an album cover. So for our music video, I pitched that we have a gorilla trans-esque stage in which it's basically like, and if you've seen the video Trans by Gorillaz, you've got like all the band members standing on this stage, and the background is like it's tripping out, like all these colors and stuff. So that's the sort of stylistic choices we wanted to make, and also the concept of Alice and I just jamming out on this like whack thing in the middle of nowhere. So that was the general gist we were going for. That was the initial pitch, and just a 30-second loop of it, so that the animators didn't have too much on their plates, and also we could just loop it, like Alice drumming and me like just jamming out on piano. Yes. So week 2, we found our animators. In week 4, so it would have been, I think it was Friday, that the animators and Alice and I, we all met up just to really establish exactly what's in scope and out of scope for this project on both of our behalves. And it was really effective because now we're all on the same page. Week 3, Monday afternoon, I recorded all of the vocals, all of the main vocals anyway, for FYF. Alice wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, due to work, which is in the risks of our project. So I made a plan, because I'd be in the studio alone, going from the live room back to the actual studio. So I made a plan to compress. Let's just take a step back real quick. I chose 2 mics, just keeping it simple. So there was an NT2A for a room mic, and then the SM58 just for the main vocals.
Update. I nailed it. It took me an hour and a half to set up like I wanted to. So I did bring this baby in here just because it's acting as my main vocal mic, and then my NT2A is actually as the room mic. I decided not to put any effects on the room mic, but this is what I did. I went door outputs 1 and 2. So up there, I basically sent the SM58 to I sent it to both aux 1 and 2, and basically also analog 1 and 2. And so I went from 1 and 2 door outputs into DBX 166XS compressor limiter, channel 2 and S channel 2. And then from there went outputs, and then I went into, don't know if you guys can see that, stereo auxiliary returns, and then I went from there straight into obviously auxiliary, and then I went from the 2 into like back into Pro Tools. So I'm really happy about that. And I nailed the compression for the vocals. So it's like I'm putting less pressure on my voice because the compressor is like making me hear the frequencies that I want. So all that I need to do now is climb back up here and take the SM58 out of the 4th channel and put the regular thingy back in, and then scoop my butt into there. Seeing as I am doing this alone, I've left myself 40 seconds to run into there before the track starts playing for me to sing to.
So the plan was to actually switch out one of the channels for the XLR of the SM58 in the actual studio so that I could compress the vocals really well while I was in there, so that I didn't have to keep on going back and forth between the studios. So I'm feeling really confident with my signal flow regarding outboard equipment, which is exciting because I've always been able to pass assessment previously regarding that, but I've never really had a chance to strategically compress. Basically, I did eight vocal strips. So we had the scratch track, just rough instrumentals. I left a 40-second gap of silence so that I could run into the other room, and then the song would play twice with a 20-second gap. So I had 4 of those sessions. And once that was over, I mean, that took up 4 hours because I at one point just couldn't get the levels right in the headphone. Like the headphone mix, I could have done a lot better. So that'd be my goal next time when I'm recording vocals alone. From that, by the end of the week, I basically did a really thorough mix of all the different vocal tracks. So pulled different phrases from different tracks that I liked. So week 3 is where Alice and I really got onto the same page. I think as soon as we got the vocals down, it was just a lot of relief between the two of us. The only thing is, sometime along this process, I ended up accidentally unlinking the room mic and the SM58, so they were slightly misaligned, and that caused phase issues. So I had to go back through and realign each individual sound wave. I'm not sure if there's an easier way to do that or not, but I did it manually, all of it. Week 3 was me realizing the disadvantages of using Logic Pro, and that is that I don't have it, and nor can I get it unless I buy an Apple product, which irks me, but that's a thing I'll have to do if I want to continue mixing on Logic which is a very real thing at the moment because I really love using the synth capabilities in Logic. I find it really, really easy and functional to use. Basically, Alice has been doing most of the synth work. I have created a couple synths with her when we have been in the MIDI studio together, but she has only, like, she's been able to mix at home and I haven't, I suppose, because I only have Pro Tools. So the only thing I have been able to do is edit the vocals. So yeah, and I did a rough mix of the vocals with effects and EQs. So just having like a high pass, getting most of the low frequencies out, and I boosted just a little bit around 100, 200 hertz, and then I also boosted like the really high frequencies. No. So I cut the low, and then I cut the high. The high very minimalist, like not a lot cut at all, but just taking out like the unnecessary high frequencies. And then I boosted like from there, so it just went whoop, yeah, basically. And then I had another dot thingy. I will literally just show you. Yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun EQing and compressing and mixing, just vocal editing in general. I think at the moment that is my niche and I really, really enjoy it. Week 4. So this is Sunday now. Last week, Alice and we already had I think it would have been the third demo, which is basically the first being just raw piano, raw vocals recorded on my phone. Second demo was rough scratch track for me to sing to while I was recording my vocals. And then third demo is basically edited vocals and, you know, EQ'd with effects and also a lot more depth in the instrumentation. So when I say that, we fixed all the synths from stock to custom. So we basically just fixed all the synths to what sound we really need in the mix, just so that we had like a better frequency balance. Because I found that the main synth, the main keys part, was actually drowning out the juicy part of the vocals essentially. So we actually put a low pass filter on that synth, and it automatically made it sound so much better. So week 4 is where we were super, super conscious of the balance of different frequencies in the general mix. We did another very rough stereo field mix, and to fix the quietness of the vocal and the instrumental part, I just doubled it and put a really sick delay and verb on it. In that track, I actually, because it was only a small delay, what I did is I manually sampled certain parts of the vocals and repeated it. So it sounded like a delay, but, you know, to me that was easier at the time. So in the future, I hope to just be able to know how to find the exact sort of delay I need and the settings that will help me get there, basically. So week 4, Alice and I actually recorded a really rough electric guitar track. When I say rough, I actually mean epic. Initially, I thought, I don't know why we were saying this, but we thought the key was just A sharp. And so I was like, okay, the key's A sharp, just have a bit of a jam out. And this was in the MIDI studio. So we actually ran the guitar through a 48 active DI box, and we ran it through into the first channel because that was the only thing we were recording. You know, it took a little bit of fiddling around, I think, for like 2 minutes because we'd never used an active DI box before. But because it had a 48 on it, I assumed that you need Phantom Power for it. So I switched on the Phantom Power for the track and wham bam, thank you, ma'am. But basically, the guitar part ended up sounding epic after we realized that it was actually A sharp minor. Yeah. 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 Yeah, no, that's about it. I'm really, really happy with where the vocals are sitting at. It's definitely my style of editing vocals that I really loved it. I find similarities between my vocals in this track and my vocals in my cover of The Night We Met on SoundCloud, because I decided to sample certain parts of my voice and repeat it and put some verby stuff on it. And I'm really loving it. Like, I think editing my vocals really gives me an insight on how I perform as an artist and exactly what is best to work with. So that'll help me in the future, not only as a producer, but as an artist.